I don't think you guys are hyped enough because today's Tinto Talk was the most insane thing imaginable. We have the very first actual confirmed map of Europe in Europa Universalis 5 with the political borders. That's right, is this bad boy behind me. Technically it is the trade nodes map mode at the start of the game, but if you look really closely you can actually see the political borders as well. And I'm gonna analyze the map first, and after we're gonna go through today's dev diary on the trade and how exactly it's gonna work in EU5. Also guys, if you enjoyed the content, consider subscribing. It would really mean the world to me. I'm trying to get to 200,000 subs, and if we do get that by the end of this month, then I promise you guys I'm gonna do a massive mega campaign with all the Paradox games. First, talk about the actual trade nodes, right? Because we can see in 1337 we have a little bit of a different trade situation, and before we continue you should know that trade nodes are something that you can change as you progress in the campaign. So the AI and yourself will have the option of making your own trade node or changing which cities belong to which trade node, so keep that in mind. It's very similar to the 1444 start date. However, there are some notable differences. The pest node is significantly bigger, which is honestly very normal since Hungary was one of the greatest nations and likely the strongest nation in Central Europe at the start of the campaign, with one of the largest standing armies in Europe at the time, a lesson they learned from having had to deal with the hordes in the previous 100 and something years. They even established Moldova as a march to defend against the invading hordes by using Romanians from the Transylvanian parts as the leadership of the various Romanian tribes or pre-statal entities that existed in this area beforehand. The Vienna node is not existent. Instead, we have a Prague node, which again overlaps with the non-existent Saxon node. Instead of Rhineland, we have the Köln node. The lowlands are a part of London. However, Normandy is not a part of London, but we do have a small little smidge over here, which you can see within the Paris market, that is a part of London node. Bordeaux is a separate node onto itself, and the other parts in the south of France belong to the Barcelona node. Genoa node actually goes all the way into South Germany, not just into the Swiss and the Genoese land. And we have Naples in the south here, neighboring Ragusa. Constantinople is pretty big. Kaffa is also around here. Trebizond is its own node. Muscovy, Kiev, Novgorod, Riga in the north, with what I assume is some sort of I'm not sure what node that is. Krakow is its own node as well, and you can see again we have a little bit of exclave of the Prague node within the Krakow node, because whoever is in control of these lands likely elected to be a part of the Prague market rather than the Krakow market. And yes, I should call this markets, not nodes, because it's not EU4, right? Lubeck, however, is probably going to be the richest market at the start of the campaign, which means that Lubeck City or the Hanseatic League is likely going to be one of the strongest starting entities by far. And as we delve in the trade dev diary, you'll see exactly why. And one thing that has caught my attention, and I'm sure has caught a lot of your attentions, is this. Look at the amount of actual political borders we have here. Yes, if you scroll in, you can see the political border. So this is Brandenburg at the start of the campaign, and you can rest assured I'm going to have a lot of Brandenburg campaigns in EU5. That is a guarantee. Then you can see around here other smaller entities within the HRE, and then you can see around here a lot of small entities within the HRE. I mean, holy mother of schnapps, dude. That is genuinely impressive. I kind of suspect we're gonna have something akin to Voltaire's Nightmare, albeit if we look at this and then we look at Voltaire's Nightmare, probably not as many tags as Voltaire's Nightmare, although it might be very close to that. I'm assuming this is at least 200 HRE nation. I haven't counted it, but it looks like around 200 HRE nation. Very likely to be around that number. Bohemia also doesn't have control over Moravia, and the Silesian Lusatian parts also are significantly more disunited, so that's going to play into a lot more diverse playthroughs in those areas. France again is very much so decentralized, which is historical. The French around this time period were extremely decentralized. Basically, the central French authority only held control directly over a small amount of their lands. Majority of France was owned by various lords and ladies. Well, it was just lords, really, which is something we don't see like that in England, because check it out, England doesn't have that many political borders. It's literally just England, to signify how a lot more centralized the English crown was compared to the French crown in 1337 and in 1444 for that matter, really. However, in the north, in the Scottish lands, we can see that we have a little bit of division. That's because of the rebellion that they had to endure during this time frame. We can also see the borders of Moldova, which include all the way into the north of modern Tulcea. That would be the Kilia settlement, or Kilia castle actually. Wallachia here as well. We see the borders that we already know of, Constantinople and the Byzantines. Very interesting to see how Serbia, despite not being the largest of nations, has 3 different markets. So the northern parts of Serbia belong to the Pest market, some of the southern parts of the Constantinople one, and most of Serbia belongs to the Ragusan market. So curious to see why and how that's actually going to play out. Maybe eventually they're going to make it so that every single province is going to be a part of the Ragusan market, which also makes me understand that you will be able to select the market that you want for each province individually, or maybe even for each location individually, which could mean that, say for example, if you have certain goods in one location that is in high demand in one market, you could add that location to that specific market, which would make you more money than if you were to add that location to another market in which that particular trade good that it produces doesn't cost as much. So depending on how costly it is to switch markets, it might even be feasible to switch markets whenever it best suits you, right? If there's not too much of a downside to it, of course, which I'm expecting that there will be a big downside to it. We also have significantly more nations within the northern parts of Italy. The reality is that the northern parts of Italy, even today, are known as the richer parts of the Italian peninsula, or the Italian nation as it is today, compared to the southern bit, which is more poor. Why is that? Well, the south was a lot more centralized through its history. After it got conquered by the Normans, it was pretty much a single entity without any division, whilst the north, you had multiple smaller city-states that fought each other continuously, and they were forced in continuous combat, continuous need for innovation, which is literally what brought about the Renaissance. These small entities couldn't rely on massive swathes of land to fight for them. They had to rely on the little they had, so they had to innovate and improve on that little bit that they had to get on top of their neighbors. So kind of like the story of capitalism, where competition breeds innovation and success, right? Whilst monopolies might not be the best thing. Just look at Naples. Also, take note, we have here the Habsburgs very much so divided. We don't have one massive Austria, pretty obvious from the map itself. We have Styria, we have Tyrol separate, and so on. However, this also brings the question, right? When you do have all of the Austrian lands unified, will that mean that it's smarter for you to create the Vienna node or the Vienna market and then add all of your lands to the Vienna market, which in turn might bring about your neighbors to join the Vienna market, because the Vienna market has more trade goods than the adjacent markets have, since your lands left those particular markets? That's a little bit of a food for thought, isn't it? We might even have some unique events that are going to bring about the creation of these markets if the AI doesn't do it. And one more thing to note is that you have different sea tiles here that belong to markets. Why is that? Well, as we talked about before, my suspicion, which in today's dev diary was confirmed, trade is fluid, so trade is going to be done via merchants and caravans and ships, right? So you literally will have to establish the infrastructure to trade with other markets and between your provinces. So how do you do that trade? Well, you have offices. That's one building we know of that's going to give you traders or market capacity, and likely ships will also have the same effect, which is why sea zones belong to specific nodes. You know, actually, it got me thinking, are there actually any holdings of the English in Paris in 1337? And I realized no, they should only have Gascony, because after the Battle of Crécy, later they managed to get Calais, and then they started working their way back into Normandy and other parts. So what is going on in the Paris market? Why are those few provinces still a part of the London market? That's actually curious, because that should not be English territory. And actually, let's zoom in a little bit. I'm not even sure if this is a separate border or not, because it overlaps the political border with the market border. This is very curious to me. I am very, very, very curious to know what's going on. If you guys have any ideas, let me know in the comment section. Could it be that just like 4 different locations within these provinces that are a part of the French kingdom are still a part of the London market for some reason? And what would the result of that be? Also, here's another little question. What if Byzantium embargoes the Ottomans from the start? Would that completely collapse their economy, since they wouldn't be able to trade within the Constantinople node, and the nation that can embargo is whoever holds the capital of the node. So that means if it's the Constantinople node, that would mean the market itself is established in Constantinople, and that's how you control the market, the rest of the provinces. So I don't know, man. So many questions that I really want to get the answer to, and that actually get me really excited and hyped for the game. Also, what the hell is this? There's actually gonna be a nation this small. It's literally a little dot on the freaking map, man. Come on, really? Actually. Okay, so now that we've spent a little bit of time admiring the confirmed map of the game, let's actually go through the dev diary itself. Johan mentions this is the final of the 4 dev diaries on the economic system, and he says that you should go through this dev diary multiple times because it might be a little bit complex. I think too you should go through this video multiple times so I get more view time and get more money. Okay, I'm gonna get $1 trillion from this video, and I'm gonna use my $1 trillion to fund a second asteroid belt mining corporation, which I'm then going to use the profits from to restore the Roman Empire a second time. Okay, all right, you hear me here? It's real, it's happening. We gonna be trillionaires, which is higher than trillionaires. Okay, it's a real word. I like how he starts it off by saying that markets are dynamic, because this is one of the most complained things about on the forums, that the EU4 markets are not dynamic. So he mentions that EU5 markets will be dynamic and will change throughout the playthrough as countries create new markets, disband their old ones if they so desire. Each market has a center in a location, and the owner of that location is in control over that market. So for multiplayers, it's very likely that everyone's going to create their own market so they don't get screwed over by their friends that control other markets. Every location and coastal sea zone will belong to the most fitting market, which depends on the market attraction of said market, the distance between location and the market center, diplomatic factors, and more. So that means locations at the start, of course, there are predefined markets. However, as you progress in the campaign, locations will be, not provinces. So that means within a province, you have multiple locations. So you could have in a province 7 different locations, all 7 a part of different markets. Keep that in mind, okay? So each of these locations will judge after the game starts what would be best for them, which market it's better for them to be a part of, in which they would get the highest profits, and so on. I'm assuming the AI will do this according to whatever parameters. However, the player will also have this option, you know, to play around with the markets. We have a nice screen here of the Riga market. We see the language that is spoken in the Riga market. That is very interesting. This is the first time we have this here, the language thing. So that is not the culture, that is the language, because it tells me that language is actually going to be a thing that will play a part in the game. So we might literally be able to restore Latin as a spoken language and then actually restore the Roman Empire depending on who we play with. That is very, very interesting. Oh my, I just noticed that. This is the second or third time I'm reading the dev diary, but I just noticed that, and that attracts me more than I can ever express, because I'm going to force everybody to be speaking Latin in the first 100 years. Okay, I'm just going to go out and say it. Now we also have the market attraction, which is at plus 6.09%. I'm not 100% sure what dictates said attraction, but I'm suspecting that the attraction, aside from specific modifiers, the main thing that's going to carry out the attraction is likely going to be the amount of goods already within the market and the prices of said goods, as well as the regulations of the market. So I'm guessing you will be able to set up specific taxes or modifiers for your markets, and nations will be more attracted to markets that have less taxes, maybe, or something of the sort. Now the greatest surplus in the Riga market is wild game, car, fur, beer, and fish. So that's very, very heavy on everyday living stuff, right? Foods, essentially, and stuff for construction like car and fur. Whilst the greatest need is sturdy grains, sand, wine, fine cloth, and gold. Take note, gold is 50 ducats a piece, fine cloth is 30, and you can see the supply is lacking. That means that there is a demand on the market itself. So don't be confused. Supply here tells me that people within the Riga market need sturdy grains, gold, fine cloth, etc. But because there is not enough of it, we have it as a lack. So we have a supply reduction here. And this is the price that people have to pay in order to make their needs met. Not super sure what this particular icon means. The hand with the heart. Maybe it's a way of signifying that you would love to buy this good whenever it's available on the market. Whilst these arrows in the top simply mean that you will buy it at the regular price when it's available on the market. This is my suspicion, okay? This is not confirmed. Just my suspicion. Most powerful merchants here. So we see Kingdom of Sweden, Hanseatic League, Livonian Order, Bishopric of Osal, and Teutonic pharaonic order, the merchant power of each of these, and then we have the merchant capacity. What is the merchant capacity? So in essence, the merchant capacity is the amount of goods that you can trade within that market. So we have here, for example, the Hanseatic League merchant capacity in Riga is determined by the Hanseatic Kontor, which means office. So we have 4 offices in Riga, Reval, Visby, and Dorpat. I'm assuming that these offices are actually buildings, like physical buildings within these cities, and they give a flat amount of merchant capacity. So I'm guessing there's 2 offices in Riga, 2 in Visby, 1 in Riga, 1 in Reval, 1 in Dorpat, which is why this is 0.5 and this is 1.0 flat. And this amounts to 2. Now this is multiplied by the fact that the Hanseatic League is a merchant republic that's also got the Commercial Advisory Council, and it's the leader of the Hanseatic League, whilst trade monopolies that were given out gives it a reduction of 25%, which ends up with apparently 4.27 merchant capacity as consequence afterward. A market has merchants who have a power depending on buildings and maritime presence in the market, and a merchant capacity which depends on the infrastructure for trade that country has in that particular market. The merchant power impacts in which order exports from a market are executed, as there is not an endless supply of goods in that market. So that means you might have 4.27 merchant capacity within the Riga market, but if you don't have the power, and the Kingdom of Sweden, which has more power than you, wants gold, then they're gonna get all the gold and you get nothing. You get whatever else you want afterwards that the Kingdom of Sweden doesn't need. Okay, that's how it works basically. Merchant power determines who gets the stuff first. Capacity determines how much of that particular thing you can trade within that market. If that's not clear enough, watch my video again, the whole video, please. I need $5 trillion in fact, because I'm also going to establish the German Empire, not only the Roman one afterwards. Now he also mentions that every good has a local price and a supply versus demand value. So we can see right here a beer in Riga, the market price is 1.48 ducats. The price changes by 0.002 each month towards the targeted price of 1.51. This is the base price of 2.0, and it's modified by minus 24.3 due to the fact that the effective supply is 15.81 and the effective demand is 0.37, and there is a price stability of 20%. Now he doesn't 100% explain what this means, but you can deduce from it, and you cannot deduce, listen close. The actual price of the beer is 2 ducats, okay? However, because there's 15 beers available in the market and only demand for 10 beers, that's an extra 5 beers that nobody wants, and that extra 5 beers brings the demand down, and as such it brings the price down by a certain amount. However, there's a price stability of 20%, which brings it back up a little bit to counteract the malice of the demand reduction, which ends up with this being 1.51. If that's not clear enough, watch my video a 4th time, please. I love it. Cheap beer must be paradise. Sounds like Barcelona to me. Prices change every month towards the target price, which depends on the supply and demand of the good in the market and the current price stability. Price stability can change through the ages as well. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that as you progress, you might get more or less price stability depending on maybe technologies, maybe on events in the world. So for example, in EU4, we have certain events that increase the price of certain goods or decrease the price of certain goods. We probably will have certain events that will do the same with the price stability and the overall price for items in EU5. The supply of each good in a market depends on several factors, including the output of the RGOs, output from buildings, base production, and burger trade. What does the output from RGOs means? That means the output of the actual mines or farms or whatever the provinces have, and the output from the buildings, again, it means the output of goods from specific buildings built within the provinces. So remember from the previous dev diary where you have buildings that produce wax, buildings that produce hide, buildings that produce motherboards, because everybody knows motherboards were totally a thing that was being produced in the 1300s alongside GPUs, of course. But what is base production? Some goods like clay, lumber, sandstone are produced in every market without the need for specific RGOs. Even if an RGO with the raw material can produce much more, there are buildings that can be built to provide that as well. By default, your population will be producing certain goods, like for example, he mentions here clay, lumber, stone, right? But you could build specific buildings that produce clay, lumber, sandstone, which will output significantly more of that particular good than just your peasants literally going around the field and finding stone. You know what I mean? Also, your burghers will trade on their own if they have the capacity for it. They will attempt to address needs within the market and can trade in a slightly shorter range, thus enriching their estate. There are laws and privileges that impact that, like the trade monopolies estate privilege that the Hanseatic League granted in the earlier screenshot, which reduced their own merchant capacity by 25 but increased the capacity of the burghers by 100. So we have here, remember this, it lowered the merchant capacity by 25%. However, the merchant capacity of the burghers 100% increased. Interesting. Another thing to note, what he mentions, trade range is short. So it's likely that the trade range is going to be within your own node or maybe very close by adjacent areas, which will likely expand again with new technology or with various other modifiers you might encounter. Maybe even some buildings can increase that. Maybe some estate buildings will increase that. Who's to say? So what about demand? This is primarily for maintenance, input, construction of buildings, recruiting, maintaining armies and navies, and the demand of population, but there are more sources as well. So this is basically confirmation that you will need weapons, armor, food, and whatever else to recruit armies and build ships, and you also will need the same thing to maintain your armies and ships. So if you don't have enough of that particular good, or you cannot afford that particular good within your market, then your navies will go into disrepair, your armies will start to not be as effective, maybe even starve out. You might lose the units, who's to say? And the same goes for the buildings. You will need specific goods to maintain the buildings so they don't go into disrepair, like the forts in the previous dev diary we've seen. Plus, the population will require goods as a default. Even if you don't have any buildings, you still need goods for your general population. Trade themselves impact supply and demand as well, of course, yes. You can use your merchant capacity in a market to either export a good from the market or import a good from another market. Of course, that market needs to be within your trade range, which is not world spanning in 1337. A trade is a variable amount of goods shipped from one market to another, purchasing it for the local price in the exporting market. The longer the distance between the markets, the more capacity each good will require to ship and higher the maintenance cost will be. Trades have an impact on the last land location they are in before leaving the market, and the first one they enter in the importing market, giving boosting development to them over time. A trade always has to trace a path on the map. Very important, guys. So that means whichever settlement the trade leaves through and whichever the trade enters is going to get a development boost. So that makes sense, because I go back to the map here. Say, for example, we have trade between the Lübeck node and the Riga node, right? And the trade leaves through this one province here and enters through the other province here, okay? That means whatever settlement is here will get a boost to their development, because that's where the trade enters from the other market. This is where the trade leaves and enters from that market, right? So the connecting point between the two markets will get some sort of bonuses and will have a very high importance. It likely means that you'll need to build some defensive structures, make sure that these 2 points do not get obstructed whenever you're at war, and make sure that you have a clear short path between the two connecting points. I like that. I really like that. The fact that he also confirms that there is a fluid actual trade on the map, so you have ships and caravans that will be going across the map to deliver your trade. That is, in my opinion, what's going to make EU5 an amazing game. Now we see one trade in particular here. So we hover over tar and we got amount of tar traded last month, which is 1.18 flat pieces of tar. Desired amount of trade is 1.18 as well. Riga market is exporting through Riga using 1.53 merchant capacity, and that ends up with a net loss of 1.46 ducats, because that is exported through the Riga market. Now we also have an import through the London market, which ends up with a 12.59 positive balance of ducats. This is further modified by the merchant maintenance, so you have to pay for your merchants. That's good to know. And the sound toll, because it goes through the Bosphorus toll, and there's going to be basically areas which will have sound tolls, the straits mostly, from what I understand as it stands right now. The end product would be the trade profit is 8.27 ducats. You can cancel the trade with the left with the right mouse button, and I would say this is a really good trade right here. That is a sizable amount of ducats. And also from this we realize that whoever controls straits in the game is going to be filthy rich. Kind of why Singapore is so rich today, really. Our merchant power makes us get the amount of goods we want in Riga. There's also sound tolls if you pass through Öresund or the Bosphorus to consider. Diplomacy and trade. There's many diplomatic factors that impact the trade and market mechanics of Project C. First of all, you can deny market market access to a nation owning a market. So that means you can deny market access to Byzantium if you are, say, I don't know, Naples, which will reduce the attraction of their market on your locations, but also make anyone with merchants in those markets upset with you. Again, I'm gonna visualize this for you guys because I feel like that's the best way to put it. So say for example, I'm not gonna do Naples and Constantinople because it's at the edge over here. Let's do Krakow and Kiev. So say for example, Krakow market, Poland just denied market access to the Kiev market, right? That means that locations which are a part of the Krakow market, say over here, which is not also a part of whoever controls Krakow, it's not a part of Poland, right? These locations, if they have all the needs met within the Krakow market, they're going to stay there. However, if they have a better income for being a part of the Kiev market or a part of the Riga market, then there's likely that they will switch to the Riga or Kiev market and leave the Krakow market because of them denying access to the Kiev market. Does that make sense? Because if not, watch the video again, okay? No, but seriously, watch it, bro. You can also request and or offer market access preference, making it likelier to a country's location to belong to a certain market. So you can give preference to certain areas, certain nations, and that's likely going to make their locations join your market. Good to know. If you dislike paying sound tolls, you can also try to ask for exemptions through diplomacy with the controlling country of the strait. So you could go to the Danes and say, yo, this be Prussia, let me go do trade through the strait without paying a sound toll. What was that? No? Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear that right over the sound of my marching army about to destroy your nation. Yeah, that's right. We better not pay tax when I get here. Boy. Some countries also isolate themselves completely, so you need to negotiate specific exemptions to allow you to export or import from their markets. It's also possible to embargo a country, which would block merchants from that country to trade in yours, and also to not be allowed to move through your country. Of course, this is a legit casus belli and use it with care. So like I said earlier, trade is going to be fluid on the market, and if you embargo a country, okay, that's different from denying access, okay? If you embargo a country, their merchants will not be able to cross through. So let's say you're Kiev, you want to trade with Lubeck, but you got to pass through Krakow's market. You don't want to trade with Krakow, okay? You don't have access, even they denied it. But you cannot pass through Krakow if they embargoed you. You have to go through Riga's markets to get to the Lubeck market. So if Riga embargoes you to, you got to go through Novgorod, or you got to go through the south or somehow, which means it's going to be, you guessed it, more market capacity costs for trading with areas within Lubeck, which makes it not efficient. So you're going to have to trade with Kaffa, you're going to have to trade with Moscow instead of Lubeck. So even if Lubeck has better prices, since it's going to take more market capacity, merchant capacity, my bad, not market, merchant capacity, it's not going to make a profit. Capisce? Each market has specific goods banned for import or export. With one example is Muslims will ban import export of wine, beer, and liquor, and bacon. I'm guessing they're going to ban bacon too. Is bacon going to be a thing, or pigs? I'm curious about that. We mentioned in an earlier Tinto talk that markets will have stockpiles, so that surplus can be stored for a rainy day. There are buildings that will increase the amount that can be stored, like granaries. There's also food in the markets, which with prices adapting to the supply and demand of food as well. So we see here food stockpile in the Riga market. We got certain specific locations that produce and certain specific locations that take more. So Riga as a city or as a location has a surplus of food, whilst Königsberg has a reduction of food. They don't produce that much, so they have to take from the Regans or from the other parts of the market to not starve, and they pay a price in return, which goes to the other people in the market. You also have automation option where you can assign trading completely to the AI. You can lock some trades so that the AI will not interfere with them. That is actually awesome. And we have a few comments as well from Johan. He mentions the civil war between Edward Ballion and Robert the Bruce in Scotland. Gibraltar is not going to be a sound toll. Will certain goods require more capacity to ship than others? Yes. In a normal war, if you have control of the market, you can embargo somebody. So like the example I gave with the Ottomans and the Byzantines. Also mentions how the lowlands were their own separate market, but they added them to the English one because they would have been too small and weak otherwise. Only straits are sound tolls for the time being. Ships and or caravans will be required for merchant capacity. You also have other infrastructure to get in that market. So yeah, he basically confirms we're going to need ships, caravans to increase merchant capacity, and that's going to be done via certain buildings and by building ships. So that gives a lot of new meaning to the cogs from EU4, doesn't it? Which technically were primarily a trade ship. And I know that from playing way too much patrician when I was a kid. He also mentions that you can have as many markets as you want, but it is beneficial to have significantly sized ones that provide you with enough resources. So the bigger the market, the better. That makes a lot of sense. So for example, for the French, it's probably better if you just merge merge all the markets you have and you just have all your provinces a part of one big market. Also very important, he says that there is a max and minimum price factor that depends on the current age. So that reinforces what I was saying earlier, that the age will have certain events that will increase or decrease prices for certain goods. Also mentions you do not need to be adjacent to trade, and you can have multiple markets in your country. A lot of people asking questions that already have been answered by the dev diary, so I'm not going to go through the rest of this. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun going through this. I personally think this was my favorite dev diary so far, and I'm curious what you guys think about the merchant system. If you like it, if you think it's too complicated, convoluted, or if you want it to go down the same direction in the future. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, because I love to go through your comments, honestly. I always do after I post these videos, just to see what you guys think about the dev diary itself. And hey, if you enjoyed the video, until the next time, check out this awesome video up next. And I want to give a massive thank you to all of my patrons, channel members, and Twitch subscribers. I would not be able to do this without all your support.